straight to the Premier League match between Brighton and bottom of the table Burnley. Well, we'll have to find out as well as Rob Noffman is watching under the lights at the Amex. How are you getting on, Rob? No?
At ease, Tony. It's Brighton 0, Burnley 0. We've just kicked off at the start of the second half. So much at stake. Burnley started the better with Loughton hitting the bar with a cross from the right, but Brighton took a grip of the grain towards half-time. Danny Welbeck, starting for the first time, has twice been denied by Nick Pope in the Burnley goal. Neil Maupay has been quiet on his Brighton return after missing a game for disciplinary reasons. As I said, we're 30 seconds into the second half, and it's 0-0.
And you can listen to commentary over on Sports Extra right now. After that, there's more Premier League football for you. Southampton could go top of the table for the first time in 32 years if they beat Newcastle. 8 o'clock is the kick-off. Full commentary to come on 5 Live. Here's the former Southampton defender, Francis Benali, who's been speaking to Drive.
Literally decades since back end early 80s, probably when we last sort of were top of the division for any length of time at all. So yeah, the opportunity, albeit maybe briefly, to go top is pretty exciting for all of us here in Southampton. There's obviously some work to be done. There's a difficult opponent to get past first.
No fans at the Amex or St Mary's later, but that's certainly not the case for one game in the Scottish Premiership. Ross County against Livingston is being played in the Tier 1 region, and BBC Radio Scotland's Eilidh Davis is inside the stadium.
I'm looking across to the pitch to the east stand and awaiting the welcome sight of the arrival of 300 fans ahead of the 7:45 kick-off here in Dingwall. Fans beginning to arrive now outside the Global Energy Stadium, and a meticulous process to gain entry. Temperatures taken, masks worn at all times, hands should be sanitised, and once inside the ground, the 2-metre social distancing rule should be adhered to. Fans must sit in allocated seats all 2 metres apart. Sadly, no shouting, singing or chanting is permitted, and no pies or teas at half-time either, I'm afraid. But Ross County fans playing their part in hopefully what will mark the gradual return of fans to football matches across the country.
We certainly hope so. Thanks very much, Ailey. And on to cricket. There was real drama at the end of the IPL eliminator between Sunrisers Hyderabad and the Royal Challengers Bangalore.
Full toss, low full toss. It's gone out to the man, sweeping in the covers. No, he's not going to get there. In fact, the ball hits the boundary. That's it. It's over. The Sunrisers Hyderabad have beaten the Royal Challengers Bangalore by 6 wickets to qualify for the next eliminator. Exceptional finish by Jason Holder. Kept his nerve, waited for that low full toss, hit it through the covers. What a victory. What a partnership. They take the Sunrisers home.
Yeah, what an ending. Sunrisers Hyderabad beating Virat Kohli's Royal Challengers Bangalore by 6 wickets in the final. Now, Sunrisers will now meet Delhi Capitals on Sunday. Whoever wins will face the Mumbai Indians in Tuesday's final. In the Super League, Salford Red Devils are currently beating Wakefield Trinity by 22 points to 4. In Rugby Union, Leicester have signed the former Saracens scrum half Richard Wigglesworth. He's won 6 domestic and 3 European titles, having spent a decade at the club. And Southall Racecourse will be allowed to resume jump meetings from next week. It's after fences were modified following an investigation into 8 fatalities at the track since the 1st of July. And that's the latest from BBC Sport.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live on digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online.
A final look at the M11, which is still closed. It's a main carriageway closure at Cambridge, northbound at Junction 11 Cambridge South, with queues backing up to Junction 10 at Duxford. Repairs are taking place and the diversion is set. You have to go round the roundabout using the slip roads instead. Leeds and the A58M Inner Ring Road still has 1 lane blocked by a breakdown. It's near Wellington Road at the A58 on the eastbound side. And staying in Leeds but heading out of the city centre, York Road, the A64 is still closed, and that's heading towards the Tor flyover. That's been causing major problems there. Torry flyover in Leeds, and that's an accident, and it's just near Plaid Row as well. The M62 and Junction 27, so just outside Leeds there, near the M621. The police have been dealing with an incident. It's on the eastbound side. The M4 is going to be closed from 8 o'clock tonight between Reading and Wokingham, Junction 11 and Junction 10. That's the whole weekend, just to warn you, and it's going to be both directions. directions. It's for repairs. And the A570 Scaresbrick New Road on Merseyside. That's in Southport, actually, but both directions have been closed to deal with an accident. It's near Mealscop Road, near the Kew roundabout, if you know the area there. And the A19 in County Durham at the Portrack interchange on the southbound side. There's a breakdown in one of the lanes. I want to mention 5 Live Travel.
5 Live Breakfast.
Liverpool, the first city in England to offer a COVID test to every resident. The UK government believes the scheme could be a way of bringing the virus under control. Let's speak to Matt Ashton, Liverpool's Director of Public Health.
Over the weekend and early into next week, we'll have significant amounts of capacity available for everybody in the city.
You're waving at me, Nikki. Go on.
I'm just saying, I'm intrigued as to what the best way to eat mushrooms is.
Fried in butter.
Fried in butter.
On sourdough.
Fried in butter. Yeah.
You know.
What about raw in a salad? No.
Yeah, no. I'll eat them raw. I'll eat them any which way, to be honest.
5 Live Breakfast. Back Monday morning from 6. Listen on BBC Sounds. 5 Live. BBC Sounds. Smart speaker and online. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
6:39. You're right, Tony. Just checking in. We've
got corners, but I'm going to listen to your interview very carefully.
You watch that, and I'll deal with this. Right, yes. Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack has said the UK government intends to refuse another independence referendum for a generation.
We've had 2 referenda in the last 6 years, and they've been quite divisive to our society. They create a lot of uncertainty for business. What we need to do now is to focus on rebuilding our economy and giving business certainty. That creates more jobs, that improves people's livelihoods.
6 years after Scotland voted to remain part of the United Kingdom, several opinion polls suggest that there's rising support for independence. Sarah Smith is the BBC's Scotland editor. Good evening, Sarah.
Good evening.
So the thing that's drawing people into this or raising questions is the once-in-a-generation argument, isn't it? Can you give us a bit of background to that?
Yes, certainly. So Alistair Jack was asked, what did he mean by a generation? He said, it could be anything from 25 to 40 years. So, that's a significant long time to wait for another independence referendum. Now, that phrase comes about because during the campaign in 2014, lots of SNP politicians, Alex Salmond and Nicola Sturgeon among them, said that this chance to vote for independence was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And that was to try and galvanise people to come out and vote in that referendum. But since then, and since they've been saying they want to have another vote on independence, well, the Conservative government in Westminster have been saying, no. You said back in 2014 this was once in a generation, so you can't turn around and have another vote now just 6 or 7 years after the first one. Of course, what the SNP say is there has been such a material change in circumstances in that Britain has voted to leave the European Union since then. That's changed everything, and that's why, even though less than a decade has passed since the last vote, they want to have another independence referendum.
And what's Nicola Sturgeon saying now?
Well, she compared Alistair Jack's comments to Donald Trump and some of the statements that he's been making in the last 24 hours and said that this was raging against democracy to try and stop people having this vote. This argument will really come to a head next year, because what will happen is we've got elections to the Scottish Parliament in May, and the same opinion polls which you mentioned, which suggest that there is rising support for independence, also show rising support for the SNP. So if they secure a really significant victory in those elections in May, they will say that's a mandate that shows they must be allowed to have another independence referendum. But the Scottish Government can't call it all on its own. It legally needs the permission of the Prime Minister of the Westminster Government to do it. So if they win that victory in May, they'll ask Boris Johnson to allow a referendum. He presumably will say no. He'll say not for another generation, and a huge constitutional fight will ensue. And you might think, well, what's the downside here for Boris Johnson? He wouldn't want to have a referendum if there's a chance that Scotland might vote to leave, so he could just keep saying no. But the political difficulty is, the more he does that, and the more people in Scotland who want a referendum, well, he risks simply drumming up support for independence by looking as though London
are passionate, aren't they? How reflective is an opinion poll that's a rising support? How reflective is that rising support of mood on the ground?
Well, of course, the thing to remember is it's not just one opinion poll. Over the last 6 months, there have now been 10 successive polls that have put support for independence in the majority. And differing amounts. The highest was 58% in favour of independence. Others have come in at like 52, 56%. But it's been a rising trend that you've seen through 6 months. Some of it was driven by Brexit, because Scotland, of course, voted to remain. And the argument made by SNP politicians is that Scotland is being dragged out of Europe against its will, because over 60% of Scottish voters voted to stay in the EU. But the handling of the coronavirus has been really interesting as well. Boris Johnson has really poor negative trust and approval ratings in Scotland for how he's handled the virus. And Nicola Sturgeon's approval ratings are through the roof. She does a press conference every single weekday, Monday to Friday. She stands and answers questions for up to an hour. And although her policy is slightly different from what's been going on in Westminster, not massively different, she looks as though she's much more in command of the policy. It's much more straightforward what's going to happen. She tells you what's going to happen when, and pretty much it does. It's not a policy that's been marked by U-turns and changes, and people really seem to trust her in Scotland more than they trust the Prime Minister in this pandemic. So it's making a significant difference.
And will the outcome of the US election have an impact as well? Because people are asking who's got a relationship with Biden.
I doubt it will make much of a difference for Scotland, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it may make a difference as to whether or not there's a trade deal done between the UK and the US. So I suppose in some ways, the outcome of Brexit rests a little bit on that. But in Scotland, people have been thinking about this for years. I mean, since the day after the referendum in 2014, the arguments have continued to go on for the last 6 years and will continue with real passion. And this is much more at the front of people's minds, I think, than what's going on in foreign affairs.
Sarah Smith, thank you so much. It is 6:45.
Yes, Joe Biden could be closing in on the American presidency after extending his lead over Donald Trump in 2 key states. He's more than 13,000 votes ahead now in Pennsylvania and 1,500 ahead in Georgia, where a recount has been ordered. Cara Alamo is an associate professor of public relations at Hofstra University and the author of Pitch, Tweet or Engage on the Street, How to Practice Global Public Relations and Strategic Communication. Cara, hello. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
I should also say you were spokeswoman for international affairs in the Treasury Department during the Obama administration too. How do you view, I begin sort of every interview that we've had tonight on this subject, Cara, asking how you view the past 12 hours or so, the past 24 hours.
Oh my goodness, I think it's so clear that Joe Biden is closing in on the presidency. I think President Trump's path to re-election is all but closed. It's nearly closed at this point. At this point, all it would take is Pennsylvania for Biden to win the presidency. He's clearly ahead there. He's also neck and neck in Georgia, which has electoral votes. He's ahead in Arizona. And so at this point, obviously, nothing is certain, and we all learned that 4 years ago when we thought Hillary Clinton would win, but at this point it's hard to see how President Trump could win.
And what do you make of the way President Trump has conducted himself over the past 24 hours or so? These claims that, to use his word, that shenanigans have taken place, that votes have been whittled away in secret, the fact that he's making legal challenges in various states, disputing the results or the counting mechanisms, and to a certain extent disputing the existence of democracy.
That's right. Well, there is just zero evidence for these claims. There is no evidence of voter fraud. And so I think these claims are laughable. Now we're hearing reports that people in the White House are trying to back away from Trump themselves because people realize how ludicrous this is. And I think the good thing about the United States is that despite everything, our democracy is stronger than this one man. And it's the people who decide who will be the next president, and every vote's going to be counted. And I don't believe that his court challenges will be successful.
He has strong opinions, and those are reflected in many of his followers, Cara, who will take him at his word. What will that mean potentially for a Biden presidency if millions of Americans don't think that it is legitimate?
I think that's a real concern. I think the good thing is that Joe Biden is just the person to try to overcome some of this. He's a real statesman. He has a history of working with Republicans, which, some people on the far left didn't like when he was running for the presidency, but I think will prove to be really, really useful to him now. So while there will certainly be a fringe in the United States that does not view the Biden presidency as legitimate, I think the silver lining here is that Biden's long history in the Senate and relationships with Republicans across the aisle will allow him to build legitimacy with the Republican establishment. By and large, you don't see the establishment suggesting that this election is not legitimate.
I just wonder, though, how long that might take. I say that in the context, we were speaking earlier to a London correspondent, and he was saying that Biden will have, this is in the context of a UK-US relationship, and he said, look, it'll be way down the list because Biden, if he becomes president, will have such a difficult time trying to bring the US back together. I'm wondering if that might take up too much of his time, say, in the first year of a presidency.
I think it will, but I think the nice thing is that Biden was part of the Obama administration, and before that had a long history working on foreign relations in the Senate. And so I think that world leaders know that they can trust him. And I think he may not have as much time to go to London and to talk to foreign heads of state as he would like if he's trying to repair his own country. But I think he has a track record that will serve him very well. And I think he will quickly reestablish America's strong standing in the world.
How important is it for American democracy going forward that if Donald Trump does lose, he loses with grace? I'm just looking here in the last few moments, Senator Lindsey Graham, who's a big Trump supporter, he says, look, he should fight hard and fight on, yet the Democratic mayor of Philadelphia says, and I quote him, the president needs to put his big boy pants on and acknowledge that he lost. So if Donald Trump is to lose, how important for your country is it, Kara, that he loses with a level of dignity?
I unfortunately don't think it's realistic that he will lose with a level of dignity, but I think that we'll see him increasingly marginalized. And so we saw just recently, Twitter has banned Steve Bannon permanently from Twitter for inciting violence. Bannon was a key advisor to Trump, and I would not be surprised if Trump himself becomes permanently banned from Twitter. Remember, the only way that he's gotten away with making crazy claims on Twitter for all of these years is because Twitter has argued that he's a public figure and that it's important that we hear him.
Oh, they actually offer an exemption to world leaders, don't they? There's
exactly.
Yeah.
And so once that's no longer the case, I think that Trump will be increasingly marginalized. Certainly, he will have a following. He will have a fringe following, but I just don't think it will have the same level of potency under a Biden administration.
And just to end, well, now you've mentioned Twitter, let's just widen it to social media. How useful is social media? We see during an election, we seem to have spent a lot of time during this American election talking about fake rumors and fake news going around the internet. We are in a different generation now, Kara, than 20, 30 years ago. So the question stands, how useful is social media during a general election campaign, do you think?
I think it's potentially much more useful than it's proven to be over the past few years. So certainly in 2016, social media was responsible for promulgating foreign fake news that I think had a huge impact on helping Trump win the presidency. The nice thing is, in 2020, social networks didn't want to see that happen again and largely intervened to try to stem the spread of fake news and misinformation. The problem is that social media is polarizing us and making America and people in other countries more divided. I think that there's a lot of ways that social networks could change their algorithms and change the way they do business to try to promote better dialogue, and we've yet to see that happen.
Kara, great to talk to you. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
Kara Alaimo there on the latest twists and turns in the US election. We imagined we might get a result on our programme today.
We got all excited,
but we've got 8 minutes left. It's looking unlikely.
That responsibility might fall to Darren Fletcher and Jermaine Genius. They're in from 7. Between 7 and 8, they've got an hour of the Friday Football Social. Then they've got live Premier League commentary of Southampton versus Newcastle.
They're here, aren't they? You're doing that job for them. Hello.
We're here.
Oh, sorry.
I was a little bit worried.
Keep going. I'm happy. You're doing it brilliantly.
So,
I was worried there because the word responsibility was used next to my name, which is never a wise thing.
I'm going to send the memo saying how we announce the election result to you guys. It's all yours after 7 o'clock.
Whoa.
Meanwhile, there's a massive Premier League game going on, and Burnley are kind of holding their own at the moment.
Yeah, they might just nick a point, Tony, if they're lucky.
I'd sell for that right now. I've had so much stress this afternoon.
Yeah, we've got a big one at 8 o'clock as well tonight. Southampton against Newcastle. Southampton could go top of the Premier League for the first time in the Premier League era. It's the first time that they've played on a Friday night, Jay, since they lost 9-0 against Leicester. And if I would have said to you back then, the next time they play on a Friday, Ralph Hasenhüttl will be third favourite for the Manchester United job and they could go top, you would suggest I was bonkers.
I would. I'd have said absolutely no. But, the guy's been unbelievable, hasn't he? So, see if they can produce that tonight.
Yeah. Third favourite behind Mauricio Pochettino and Allegri.
Why are you saying it like that, Tony?
I don't get that, Jermaine. Do you get that?
He's done an unbelievable job. You know what? I do get it. I actually do. When I look at managers, I think about style of play. It wasn't so long ago that Mauricio Pochettino was at Southampton and, kind of set out his stall as to what he was going to be as a manager. So I'm guessing there'll be one of those steps for Ralph before he gets to the big job, but he's definitely, I think, on the radar of a few of the big clubs, I would say.
Let me just stress there is no job for him to go to at the moment because Solskjaer is still there, and that's something else we're going to talk about tonight, of course, as well as Manchester City against Liverpool, the small matter of that, and the fact that Chelsea all of a sudden look like they're really a team coming together all over the pitch. So we've got loads to squeeze in between 7 and 8 o'clock, so we better get cracking.
So what you're saying is you wouldn't have time for an announcement from America?
Oh, we'll fit that in, of course. But we might send it to VAR first, just to make sure.
Yeah, I'm sure you won't be the only one wanting to do that. Boys, Helen, this is the part of the show where they both show they know far more about football than me, so we'll draw a veil. Thanks, chaps.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.
I'm still getting used to these COVID times. I was looking around thinking, where are they?
Yes, they're in the ether somewhere.
Right, they're here. We just cannot see them. Yes. Right, we were talking about this earlier. Can what you eat as a child in school determine how tall you are? Apparently, a study has shown that what you eat when you're at school determines an average height gap of 20 centimetres. So is it genetics? Is it really nutrition? How is life as a tall person? Earlier, I caught up with Nicholas Coolish, who's a journalist from the New York Times, and has written about his height because he stands at 6'8".
I think there are two sort of sides to this, right? There's sort of the genetic predisposition, right? If both your parents are 5'3", you're probably not going to be 6'8". But you might become 5'8" or 5'9", if you have the right diet. Whereas I think that, on the flip side, my father, for instance, like his mother smoked, 2 packs a day and drank a lot of gin and tonics while she was pregnant with him, and he's quote unquote only 6'2". That doesn't sound very short to most people, but in my family it actually is.
So you've got a lot of tall relatives, but if this theory is right, it suggests that you also grew up, eating organic veg all day and wild caught salmon and things like that. Did you have a good diet as a youngster?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. My mother was really unusually involved in the whole, all fresh vegetables, all fresh fruits, everything made at home. It was a very rare occasion when we actually, went out for a cheeseburger.
Presumably there's obvious downsides. You've got to go to specialist shops to buy trousers, but are there any downsides as you become an adult?
Yeah, I think that I think you can sort of put the strangeness of being really tall, not 6 feet tall, but 6'8" or pushing towards 7 feet, into the sort of the physical, like you said, not fitting in planes, not being able to buy shoes, but then also the sort of the social. People will sort of sneak up behind me to take photographs with me. I've had people jump to try to touch the top of my head with their fingertips, putting their feet next to mine, holding their hands up, all of which is happening while I'm trying to live my private life, in a restaurant, in a bar, waiting in line at Starbucks.
Less of an issue for me, standing at 5'3", that.
Who said that? Yes. You know, earlier on we had a... Sorry, can I move on?
Yes, yeah, go on.
Yes. We talk about modelling, and somebody, I can't remember his name, in Bristol.
Model aircraft.
A gentleman in Bristol said he'd made model aircraft, shoved them on his office roof, and I told him how to make flak bursts from cotton wool. Dave in Newbury, this is a bit anoraki now, but he says, Tony, surely you can't think that aeronautical dogfights was subject to flak. Your man who texted in said his models were hanging in dogfights. Firstly, ground-based anti-aircraft gunners would never be able to keep pace with ducking and diving fighter planes in Mortal Kombat. Secondly, they'd be fearful of hitting their own man. Flak was only used against bombers. Thank you, Dave.
What I really enjoy about that is the fact that because he's put bombers and gunners in it, it's flagged up as a red caution. We've got to be very careful. Let's find out what's happening.
Yeah, Rob's here. Rob, hello.
Hello, Tony. Still 0-0 here. Brighton 0, Burnley 0, and very much the pattern at the end of the first half repeated in the second. Lots of Brighton possession. They're knocking on the door, but they can't get through this Burnley defence. Nick Pope has made one other really good save in this second half, and Burnley hanging on. 20 minutes left. They've just brought on Jay Rodriguez for Ashley Barnes up front, but it's 0-0.
This is the life of a Burnley fan. Welcome to my world, Rob, where it's just Alamo time all the time. The stress levels are through the roof.
What have Burnley not done in the top flight since 1926, Tony?
Worn long shorts. No,
Good
I don't
answer.
know. What?
They've never won a top flight game on a Friday.
Oh, really?
So there we go. That's why I have no friends in this world.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I won't.
No, he's right. No, he's right. Rob, thank you. Speak to you later.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Oh. It's a lovely guy, really. Can you get him back on? I need to apologise. Rob, are you there? I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that, really. I know
I'll kick him for you, Rob.
Cheers, Rob.
Cheers, Tony.
Bye-bye. There we go.
I didn't claw it back.
I wouldn't have slept back and made that. Right, I'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, see you Monday.
On digital, BBC Sounds, smart speaker and online. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
BBC News at 7 o'clock. This is Catherine Cracknell. Joe Biden is on course to become President of the United States after overtaking Donald Trump in the key state of Pennsylvania. A win there would be enough to take the Democratic candidate to the White House. 40,000 postal ballots are still to be counted. Philadelphia's Mayor Jim Kenney said the city was an example of democracy in action.
The votes will continue to be counted until every valid mail-in ballot, absentee ballot, and provisional ballot is counted. So while some, including the president, continue to spew baseless claims of fraud, claims for which his team has not produced one iota of evidence, what we have seen here in Philadelphia is democracy, pure and simple.
A recount's been ordered in another key state, Georgia, where Mr. Biden's currently 1,500 votes ahead. Meanwhile, President Trump's team have insisted the race is not over and have called Mr. Biden's lead a false projection. Two NHS trusts in Birmingham and Manchester have cancelled all planned surgery at their biggest hospitals. The trust said they needed to focus on treating emergency cases, including patients with COVID-19. Mass testing for coronavirus has started in Liverpool, where people are being asked to take part even if they don't have symptoms. 6 centres have opened and hundreds of soldiers are helping out. Brigadier Joe Fossey is from 8 Engineer Brigade.
The key is all about synchronising things and getting the right logistics in place. So the soldiers have got to set up these test sites. We've got to advertise that to the people of Liverpool. We've got to connect in with the NHS clinicians and our civilian teammates, and integrating all of that little lot is the absolute prize.
Johnny Depp has left the Fantastic Beasts film franchise, losing a libel case over a newspaper article which called him a wife-beater. Posting on Instagram, the actor said he'd been asked to resign from his role as Grindelwald. Sir Cliff Richard has become the first artist in chart history to top 5 album in 8 consecutive decades. Music, The Air That I Breathe, was released last month, shortly after he turned 80. Here's our entertainment correspondent, Colin Patterson.
Cliff Richard's music, The Air That I Breathe, has gone straight into the album's chart at number 3, higher than new entries by grime artists Dizzy Rascal and Sheffield rockers Bring Me the Horizon. It means Cliff is the first act to have had a top album in 8 different decades. He first made the chart back in 1959 when he was 18, and the number 1 album was South Pacific.
dry night for all areas. With light winds, mist and fog patches will develop widely across the UK, but there may be a few clear spells in parts of Scotland. And that's the BBC News at 7:03.
Hear the best lives this November with 5 Live Sports Extra on the BBC Sounds app, including women's football,
Vivian Miedema with her 50th goal in the WSL,
Formula 1 practice sessions and qualifying.
That last lap, it got better and better as I went through.
Rugby union.
towards the line, and it's going to be a try. Right place, right time.
International and IPL cricket.
Slog sweep over mid-wicket.
And much more.
The best live sports.
5 Live Sports Extra.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
The Friday Night Football Social. This is BBC 5 Live with Darren Fletcher and Jermaine Genus.
JJ, what a difference a week makes for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Yeah, tough week, Annie. I mean, it wasn't so long ago we had that great result against Leipzig. Everyone thought things were on the up. And, the last 2 results have been anything but that. His back's against the wall. He's been there before, but he's got a big game this weekend to try and get himself out of trouble.
The big game of the weekend is Manchester City against Liverpool. Commentary from 4:30 on 5 Live Premier League Sunday. Who do you fancy here? This one's fascinating.
Oh, you know what? I think both are in a good bit of form at the right time for this game, aren't they? You know, before you'd kind of look at Liverpool and go, well, without Van Dijk, but they seem to have coped well without him. No Aguero, but all of a sudden, Sterling's popping up with the goals as well. Torres popping up with the goals. Big game. Can't wait.
Southampton, Newcastle commentary tonight. The Saints can go top of the table. You can text us 85058, standard network rate supply, or tweet us at 5 Live Sport. It's a Friday, so it'll get fiery.
From BBC Sport.
This is 5 Live Sport.
So welcome to the programme. Now we'll do the Friday Football Social through until 8 o'clock tonight. That's when we'll bring you commentary of Southampton against Newcastle in the Premier League on 5 Live Sport. And we'll be at St Mary's a little bit later on. But before we do that, over on 5 Live Sports Extra, there's commentary of the 5:30 kickoff in the Premier League. Brighton playing Burnley, and Rob Nothing can bring us the latest from the Annex. What's it looking like, Rob?
Well, it remains Brighton 0, Burnley 0, 13 minutes left, Darren. It's tight, it's competitive, rather nervy. Both sides can't really afford to lose. Brighton have shaded it. Danny Welbeck starting for the first time, had a couple of good efforts saved by Nick Pope. Burnley's best chance very early on, a cross by Matt Lowton, which smacked against the crossbar. Substitutes have been introduced. Both managers desperately don't want to lose, with both teams needing the points down the bottom of the table, but with 13 minutes left, it's still 0-0.
You can listen to both of the nice commentaries and the Friday Football Social over on the BBC Sounds app. Right, okay, so JJ is here. How are you, mate? You all good?
I'm all right. Your tone of your voice was a bit lively there, though. You might want to just calm down. We ain't even got started yet.
I've just seen you on the Zoom roll your sleeves up in a really aggressive manner, which there's no need for after last week. Last week's been forgotten now. What I would say is a lot of our listeners thought that we wouldn't be friends by this week. This is madness.
They need to realise that this is how we operate. You know, if it's too nice, then there's just no point in even phoning each other, is there? Let's be honest. So, yeah, I mean, sleeves are rolled up in preparation. That's what it is. You know, like when you know you've got a big game, you just feel like that little bit of something in the air. That's what my Fridays feel like. I come into my office and I just think, well, I never know what you're going to throw at me, so I just got to be ready for you.
Would you like to tell everybody the picture that you sent me yesterday? Last night, I was sat there, minding my own business, had a bit of tea, thinking about the weekend, and then my phone goes off, and you sent me what picture yesterday?
I sent you a lovely screenshot from Jose Mourinho on his Instagram. Just posting a picture of him just peacefully and a little caption. Just a little caption talking about the game. You know, he knows they played well but can do better. So I just thought I'll send this to me mate Fletch. I know he loves Jose's Instagram, so wallop straight into your inbox. There you go.
Yeah,
you loved it. Absolutely.
I did. Well, I've given it some thought after last week, and I thought I was I thought I was being like the Grinch at Christmas.
Little bit.
Yeah, I thought I was being like the Grinch at Christmas. We're moving towards December, and I thought, I sat back after, and I thought, you miserable so-and-so. I did. I thought, you miserable so-and-so. I thought, when you were younger, and you used to look at fellas and say, hope I don't get miserable like him when I'm older. And I thought, that was you. That was you. You were miserable. Let Jose eat his popcorn and snap away till his heart's content.
you know, now and again you come across weeks like this. You don't feel your best. You're a little bit down, and we have the opportunity just to vent, don't we, on radio? I think, you know, from your point of view, I'm glad you've looked at it like that. And you've had a chance to reflect and just thought, you know what? Let Jose do Jose, all right? And we'll see what happens down the line. For all you know, there might be one last caption at the end of the season of a lovely Premier League trophy right next to him of eating a bag of crisps.
Exactly.
And I'm going to direct the message that straight to you as well.
He could be the first manager to not pull in the trophy, but to fill it with crisps, just to wind me up and everybody
popcorn,
else. So I've decided that after the show tonight, I'm actually going to follow him. So you won't need to actually. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to back down that far. That far. Yeah. So I'm in the Jose bubble.
You've been all right though? You've been all good?
Yeah, really good. I had a couple of games of golf this week, which we can't do now, so I squeezed a couple of those in, so I'm going to miss that. And I really enjoyed the Champions League this week. I did Atalanta against Liverpool, and Liverpool were fantastic.
Oh wow, what about that game?
Brilliant, weren't they? Weren't they good?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What about Jota?
I know, you can't leave him out, can you? We'll talk about that.
He could be the first guy that gets a hat-trick that gets benched, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, and then I saw Chelsea after, and they really looked to me as though they're coming together as a team, at the back and the front and everything. Yeah, so I've had a good week. You? All good for you?
Pleasure, mate. Yeah, same again, really. I mean, I did the commentary on the Spurs game, and they were back at it, and I'll be honest with you, it's the best I've seen of Bale as well. Sharpness in his game, touch, feel, the way he moved, the way he pressed. I'd be surprised if Jose didn't start him this weekend. I think he was that good. So some good stuff there for Spurs fans to look forward to.
Right, so let's get cracking because we've got loads to squeeze in between now and the kick-off at St Mary's at 8 o'clock. Alistair Bruce Ball and Karen Carney, your commentary team for that one. What a special night it could turn out to be for Southampton. They can go top of the Premier League if they win, but we'll get to that in a minute because with Alistair Bruce Ball on the programme, we've got to start with the Fancy 606 podcast, which is out now on BBC Sounds. Ali's at St Mary's, as I mentioned. Ali, we lost to Nick Bright this week, 46-51, which is a bit of a disaster for us, really.
Yeah, but I've watched you two this season, and already it's better than last season. What I enjoy about you two, and I always have a listen on a Friday night, is the roles that you've taken on within the team this season. There's a very clear definition of roles, I feel, which is helping. But what amuses me, you quite like to get the checkbook out. You don't mind taking points hits for making transfers. Quite often I look at your team and you've made 3, you've made 4, and you basically back your teams to go out there and perform, but you give yourselves a little handicap. So, and this week, as you'll know if you've listened to the pod, is probably the grudge match of the head-to-head league so far this season, because Statman Dave is taking things very personally after your little dip at him a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but which is good news for him. He's playing his wild card this week, which I didn't even know what that was until this afternoon, so he's clearly taking it far more seriously than we are. We've actually looked at this, Jermaine and myself, and we're actually taking this as a week off. We're not going to rise to the Statman Dave bait. He can have the win, we're not too bothered. Right. We're looking longer term, bigger picture, all that kind of thing. So we're just going to try and move Dave aside because there are obviously a big names down the road that we've got to focus on, Jermaine and I. So we can't get, it's like an FA Cup third round tie and you're getting bogged down by playing Yeovil. Well, in actual fact, you've got Man U the following weekend. So that's the way we're going to take it.
Yeah, you're right. I've got to back him up on that. I have. It's true. I mean, Statman. What? Who? When? I mean, yeah.
You guys are in the head-to-head league. You guys are ahead of him. You're 3 points ahead of him. So were he to beat you, you'd then be level on points. In overall points, in terms of points racked up by your team away from the league table, he is actually having a very, very good season.
Yeah.
He's played the wild card. Looking at your teams, they're quite similar for this weekend. You've both got Salah. You've both got Son. You've both captained Kane. You've both got Calvert-Lewin. You've both.
So basically, we know as much as he does, and he's supposed to be the expert, and we're just playing at it. And let me just inform you on this as well. We have no interest in the overall points. We're only concentrating on the head-to-head league.
Head-to-heads, yeah. It's just bragging rights. That's all we're here for. So many changes, but the fact that he's had to go and play his wild card for his big game,
well,
that says it all, really.
It is. Let's hear about that, Jay, because Chris Sutton asked him why he's played the wild card this week.
Has they got under your skin, Dave? I can just tell by your body language. There's something there.
As much as I would like to say, I'm going to beat them and it's going to be good, and I've done it because the wild card is the reason why I want to beat JJ and Fletch, but they are no competition this season. They're in the mud. They're in the dirt. Their team is atrocious.
Why have you done it then?
The long-term plan.
So what Fletch said, it didn't get under your skin, it didn't niggle you, it didn't aggravate you.
Again, like we'll see at the end of the season. This season, I'm very much my results at the end of the season. That's how I'll stand up. And if I've beaten JJ and Fletch, that's absolutely fine. Then we can revisit their slander and their abuse that they gave me on the podcast. That's fine. But I didn't even know. I played the wild card without even knowing. This is just another little bonus of the wild card, playing it this week exactly at the right time. And hopefully we can give them a hammering.
No, he's just used the word slander there, Jermaine. I've been watching the US elections this week, and it's only slander if it's incorrect. So we stand by everything we said last week.
Oh, we're under his skin.
We are majorly under his skin. Yeah.
That's how you do it. That is.
I like it. I don't care if we lose now, because we've had a week where he's been wound up by us, and Chris Sutton's been able to go for him like that. I love it.
Nice.
I love it.
No one better either. There's no one better really to give it to him than Chris Sutton. Perfect.
Right, shall we get down to the serious stuff?
Yeah, let's get on with it, come on.
Yeah, Southampton, Newcastle, 8 o'clock tonight. Ali's alongside Karen. Have you got the team news?
Yeah, I do, Darren. 2 changes for Southampton. The obvious player missing is Danny Ings. They're really going to miss him, out for 6 weeks. International break on the way, which I guess from the club's point of view softens the blow a little, because it gives him a little more time to recover, and hopefully he won't miss as many club games. The big question is, how do they cope without him? Well, it looks like Walcott will go up front tonight alongside Shay Adams in the sort of 2 split strikers. Zach Stevens comes in at left back. Ryan Bertrand is missing this evening, so Stevens, who we regularly see at centre back, is going to play at left back, and Musa Djenepo comes in place of Danny Ings. As you the table tonight if they win, and let's not forget the start to the season that Newcastle have made. If they win tonight and they're unbeaten away from home in the Premier League this season, they could actually go 4th. Steve Bruce has kept it nice and simple. Same team that beat Everton last time out.
Let's bring in Karen Carney, who's alongside Ali for the commentary tonight. Karen, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
We're very good, thank you.
Don't lie, Kaz, tell the truth. Freezing.
I'm freezing, but I was just laughing at how much Statman Dave was chomping. He was absolutely chomping. I did enjoy listening to that, actually. It was quite
I'll be honest with you, we're not very good at many things, but we're quite good at that, getting up Statman Dave's skin. We've managed to work that out. So if they go top, Karen, it'll be the first time in 32 years that they'll be the leaders of the top flight. And I was saying when we spoke to the guys on Drive before the game, they've not played on a Friday since the 9-0 against Leicester. And I said to Jermaine, if I would have said to you back then, by the time they play on a Friday again, they'll have the chance to go top, and Ralph Hasenhüttl will be third favourite with the bookies to be the Man United manager if Solskjaer goes, you would have said I was mad. But you probably also would have said something similar after the defeat to Tottenham earlier in the season. But it's astonishing, really, the way this has all turned around for where they're heading at the moment, isn't it?
It's crazy, but I watched them here against Everton, and how he's turned it round. They outrun teams, they press, they're aggressive, they all know what they're doing. I think the big one is the obvious one, is Danny Ings not being available tonight. He's just so prolific. What he brings to the team, Che Adams has improved immensely. I think he struggled a little bit from his move from Birmingham. Now he's settled in. But what he's done, the club have stuck with the manager and they've backed him. And the players are playing for him. They all know what they're doing. I think when they lost at 9-0, they lost their identity a little bit. And they've got that back. That's because they stuck with the manager. They went back to basics, and they're doing the simple things very, very well. And like I said, when I watched them against Everton, they just absolutely outran them, pressed them, aggressive, and were clinical, and were really, really good. And they haven't stopped there, really.
When we saw them against Spurs, Jermaine, they looked a really easy team to attack, didn't they? That high line, long ball over the top, Heung-min Son in on numerous occasions, and it turned out to be an easy day for Tottenham. What do they do differently, if anything, now to have stopped that then?
You know what, the worrying thing on that day was they started the game really well in that first half, if you remember right, and they played with this high line, and they didn't get the rewards that they usually probably or have been getting in the early stages of games. So they play this high line, they press high, they're aggressive, they win the ball, they score goals. If those goals don't hit, or if those attempts don't hit, and they continue to play that way, it doesn't take too long for teams to figure out, hang on a minute, if we just miss out this section here, they're playing such a high line, we can get in behind. You saw a little taste of that with Villa, I think. You know, Villa kind of, I suppose, threw quarter the wind and found a way to actually, you know, break them down and put it right on their toes towards the end of that game. So I think those kind of early stages of a game for Southampton, or for Newcastle tonight, in weathering that storm, that high pressure and stuff, and I think Newcastle are one of the best at it, actually, because they play quite compact and don't mind playing counter-attack football, San Maximan and Almiron and so on. But yeah, I think they are very good at doing what they do. My worry was, when it doesn't go right, they don't seem to be able to adapt. And that's what's going to be interesting tonight. In that game against Tottenham, it didn't take all they had to do was drop off, stop pressing high up the pitch, and you wouldn't have conceded 6 goals. And we said to each other, you can see why they conceded 9 that night, and we don't want to keep talking about it because this is a team that could go top the league tonight. So, I think it's best to focus on how well they've done and why Ralph's been linked with big jobs and so on.
We'll have a quick look at Newcastle in a minute, but of course no Danny Ings tonight, no Danny Ings maybe for the foreseeable future, Karen. What effect do you think that is going to have on Southampton?
Everything, I think, even not just going onto the pitch, it's mentally. Jermaine will know as well, not having your top goal scorer, your main talisman in your team, it does have an effect, and no matter who you bring in, it's still in the back of your mind. We haven't got Danny Ings, and then you look at him, he starts to press, he's the one that gets everyone up the pitch, he's a link-up player. Like I said, the partnership with Che Adams is really, really good. One drops in, one goes long, and they flip him and they reverse it. So just not having him, and he's just been so prolific in the 18-yard box. Everything he hits, you think it's going to hit the back of the net. And when you don't have that player in your team, I just think it doesn't matter who you bring in, there's automatically that lingering in your back in mind. We haven't got Danny Ings, we haven't got him on the pitch today. So I do think they'll struggle without him, I really do, because I think he links everything up, both in and out of possession.
Yeah, Ali, we can't forget Newcastle in all of this, because if they win, they go 4th, and they've made a really solid start this time around under Steve Bruce. Callum Wilson has been a great addition for them, and they're going to turn up tonight thinking this is a big chance for us.
Yeah, and we've seen them away from home this season, Darren. I think Steve Bruce, you'll hear the Newcastle fans debate it. Sometimes they're not thrilled by the football away from home. They sit in. I did the game at Tottenham. They snatched a 1-1. Tottenham, should have been streets ahead by the time they got the late penalty. At the time, we were debating whether it should have been a penalty or not. But they hung in there, 3 centre-backs, get behind the ball. But then Saint-Maximin starts tonight. Callum Wilson has been a fantastic signing. Where else did they go? They won an 8 on the opening weekend of the season as well. So I think this will be a tight game tonight, and I think that's also where the whole Danny Ings factor comes in, because tight game, you might only get 1 or 2 chances. His finishing has been just incredible as season and a bit. So Southampton are going to miss him in that respect, because I don't think Newcastle will give him too much room.
We'll speak to Alistair and to Karen during the next 40 minutes while we chat about some of the other games this weekend. There is a game in the Championship taking place at the moment. 57 minutes gone, Cardiff 0, Bristol City 1. And there's one match in the FA Cup first round tonight as well. League 2's Harrogate Town are taking on the lowest ranked team left in the competition, Skelmersdale United, and is at the CNG Stadium for us tonight. How are you, Ali?
I'm fine, Flesh, thank you. Now, there was a time when Harrogate Town were the non-league side looking to upset the odds. They're now safely ensconced in League 2, as you say, so it's 9th tier Skelmersdale who are hoping to shock. The town, 6 miles west of Wigan, celebrated winning the FA Amateur Cup 50 years ago. Among their famous former players, you'll find the names of Steve Highway and Peter With. The sides have never met. The mist has been rolling in, and this tie is oozing FA Cup atmosphere.
Fantastic. Full time at the Amex, by the way, in the Premier League. Was there any late action, Rob Northman?
Not really, Darren. It's finished Brighton 0, Burnley 0. So the headline is that Burnley are off the bottom of the table with only their 2nd point of the season. Brighton probably had the better chances. 2 for Danny Welbeck starting his first game for Brighton in the first half. He was well denied by Nick Pope in the Burnley goal. Burnley had hit the bar early on through Matt Lowton, but after that, a lot of Brighton possession, not enough quality in that final third. They couldn't produce enough clear-cut shots. Burnley at their most cussed and resilient. It's finished Brighton 0, Burnley 0.
In today's other sports news, Nigel Clough has been named the new manager of League 2's Mansfield Town, and it's a big night in Super League as Wigan Warriors have the chance to win the League Leaders Shield if they beat Huddersfield Giants tonight. Commentary is on 5 Live Sports Extra from 7:45. OK, let's get stuck into the Friday Football Social then, and there's only one place to start. Manchester United are away at Everton in the Premier League from 12:30 tomorrow, and we'll have regular updates on 5 Live Sport. Since the dismal 2-1 defeat to Istanbul Başakşehir in the Champions League on Wednesday, there's been lots and lots of speculation over Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's future as the Manchester United manager. Here's what he had to say at the press conference earlier today.
You have to be mentally strong. You have to be, of course, there's demands on a Man United player and a coach and a manager. And there's also an expectation because we are at the best and the biggest club in the world, and you don't expect to have anything but criticism then. It's just how you deal with it, how you deal with that setback. And from what I've seen from the boys, they've been very focused since we come back, ready to give a response. If I don't trust my beliefs and values and my staff's quality and the players' quality, who else should? Of course, I am very, very... I don't look at one or two results and fall like a house of cards. It's, setback, definitely. I think there's been too much made of, say, not scoring against Arsenal and Chelsea, because those games, there's been more or less nothing in those two games. And it's not long ago we were the best thing since sliced bread when you beat Leipzig and PSG. So there's ups and downs in football, and that's just the way it has to be. And you've got to have that belief in the players. The club has been very positive. They've shown me their character and the strong leadership. So I'm looking to Saturday morning or lunchtime. It's another matter.
So that's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the Manchester United manager, who's now odds on to become the first Premier League manager to lose his job this season. Mauricio Pochettino is odds on to replace him, followed in the bookies' odds by Max Allegri and then Southampton's Ralph Hasenhüttl. How critical do you think this game is against Everton tomorrow lunchtime, Jay, for him?
It's a weird one. First is not very, and I only say that because I feel like the inevitable is going to happen soon anyway. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been in a situation many times where his back's been against the wall and he's been questioned. And, in fairness to him, he's come out swinging. I never thought Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would survive 100 games as Manchester United manager. I really didn't. Let's be honest, he came in as a stopgap, very little managerial experience, taking on one of the biggest jobs in world football. And he did a very good job last year. Obviously the semi-finals cost him hugely in terms of it being a really top season. But the finishing in the top four after a really tough start was great for him. He seemed to find some form. Has come, for me personally, or if I was in the Manchester United hierarchy or anybody making any decisions at United, would be just kind of those long-term thoughts. Have I been watching a manager that I see at the helm for a long period of time of football on a consistent basis that I enjoy watching? Have I got a set system and a belief in a set system? And then you could add to that, obviously, the acquisitions of players coming in. I'm not seeing a picture of something being built over the course of time that Ollie has been there, whether that's the hierarchy's fault, which I kind of said he'd been thrown under a bus a little bit at the start of the season by not bringing in the players that I think he deserved by getting him into the Champions League. But we're now at a situation where I don't see how he's going to be able to keep his job. No matter what he does, I don't think in this game, next game, or the game after that, I feel like they've made their mind up and a decision will be made by, before January, I think.
Karen, it's fascinating because Jermaine's made a really good point there that towards the back end of last season, I think we could all see an identity, couldn't we, for Manchester United, that he very rarely changed the 11. The team were winning games and they were good enough to mount that late run to get themselves into the Champions League, and then they were being talked about as outsiders to be, serious challengers to Liverpool and Manchester City this season. But the early weeks of this season would indicate that he's gone kind of back to the drawing board and doesn't really know what to do. He's played 3 different shapes in the last 6 matches. He's won and lost with 2 of them. The only one that he hasn't lost with was when he played 3 at the back in Paris against Paris Saint-Germain. He's trying lots of things which might be seen as a positive, but the fact he's changing the way they play so often can also be seen as a big negative, can't it?
Yeah, like you said, I watched them quite a bit in the restart, and I thought they're the best team I watched live. Their intensity, the players were all playing really well. They had a tempo to them. The front 3 were just brilliant, scoring goals, dynamic, exciting. And you go on then in the summer window, go and get him the players that he needs, go and support him, and he didn't. And you're right, they've gone backwards. He's had to put out a lot of fires off the pitch, which hasn't helped him. And you're right, and I think he's again putting out fires. Players aren't playing well. Bruno Fernandes in the restart was absolutely brilliant. He's not playing well at the moment. A lot of the players aren't, the after stuff issues have come on, and he's changing formations and shape. But I think, getting rid of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, is that the answer? Because, it's happened before. You've got rid of Moyes, Van Gaal, Jose Mourinho. For me, it's just bigger issues at Manchester United, the infrastructure. Why don't you go and get a director of football? Why don't you go and get a manager that would sit next to the director of football? They sit around together and go, this is our philosophy. This is what we're going to do. We're going to build something. I'm going to see something. And they just don't do that. Their recruitment's all over the shop. The players they bring in, it's weird. You look at Liverpool, the transformation, the Klopp, and then Michael Edwards, what he's done in terms of bringing players in that fit what the manager needs, and just being really clever in that. Wolves as well, and look at Chelsea now bringing in Petr Cech, and you just see directions in which they're going. I don't see that with Manchester United. So you can go and get a manager, but for me as well, it's bigger than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Has been for a long period of time, and they need to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. And I would say go and get a director of football as well. Change the infrastructure. I mean, I'm throwing it out there. I'd love to see. I saw Rio Ferdinand's passion and how he spoke about it. I'd love to see someone like that at the football club that is going to call someone out when they have bad performances and make themselves accountable. So, like I said, it's much more than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for me.
Ali, do you think there's been a culture change in as much as for so many under Sir Alex Ferguson it was solely based around winning and trophies, and the ethos was, and Fergie used to say it himself, we have to put a trophy in the cabinet every year for it to be any kind of successful. Has it become too commercial and business focused? And in actual fact, if that is the case, Solskjaer's quite a nice fit, because he's not going to rattle any cages. He's not going to come and out anybody like Mourinho did, because they're not signing the players that he wants. In circumstances, is he quite comfortable for everybody in there?
Well, I mean, some Manchester United fans, Darren, would definitely agree with you, because it's funny, I was saying to Karen before driving to the game today, I knew we were obviously going to be talking about Manchester United tonight, and so I wrote Manchester United down in the middle of a bit of paper and then tried to do lots of different lines off it, because there's just a myriad, as Karen was just saying, it's so much bigger than just Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and what you're talking about there is a big part of the picture. And since they took over, have been unpopular with lots and lots of fans, right from the start. From what's going on the pitch, the other little line I drew off my diagram, which I eventually gave up on because there were just too many to draw, was Solskjaer in his day played in a great team. We know that. You knew what you were going to get from them. You pretty much, as the opposition, knew how they were going to line up, but you couldn't do anything about it, really. And you also knew the level of performance you were going to get in terms of effort and application, and you weren't going to get too many poor performances. The team he is now in charge of has got some very talented players within it, and on their day they can be amazing, as we've seen. But the inconsistency is absolutely maddening. I'm sure for him, I'm sure for the players, and I'm sure for the fans. So in terms of what you're talking about, Darren, in terms of, right, it's only a successful season if we can get a trophy in the cabinet, I mean, it could happen in a cup company, could string those sort of run of results together. We saw them get to the semi-finals last season. But week in, week out, you don't back them consistently to bang out result after result after result, do you?
So somebody said to me today, Jermaine, that it doesn't seem like he's lost the dressing room. And I countered that by saying I'm not necessarily sure that he's ever actually completely had the dressing room. And the reason why I say that is that when Mourinho walks into your club, and we talked about him last week, and expected with him that if you follow his path, he's going to take you places that you've not been before.
Yeah.
And that was probably the case when he was at Manchester United. And when that didn't happen, then you start to lose players who lose the faith. I wonder how many in the changing room actually genuinely believe that Solskjaer could take them there. So if you don't believe he can take you there, you're not really going to fall out of love with the whole process, are you?
No, is the answer, I suppose, to the question. It's interesting when you look at that United kind of team, and the reason why I feel sorry for Ollie at times is because, with the players that he actually has. So you look at that midfield, for example, he's got. I don't think it's any surprise, basically, when Matt play, that they're almost a better team, right? And in a weird way, Matic wanted to leave at some point last year, or was going to leave. Pogba never stops talking about going to Real Madrid. You've got a good few players in there, I would say, that have either had their eye elsewhere, looking elsewhere. There's too many in that dressing room, I think, that are just quite happy that they're at Manchester United earning a load of money and do they really, really care about Ollie and him losing his job or not? I'm not sure they do. So they will play certain games and perform in certain games because they know they're on the world stage and their eyes are on them. But I don't feel like they're doing it for Manchester United. I don't feel like they're doing it to make sure that their manager keeps hold of his job because they desperately love him and believe that he's a man that's going to get them like a European title. I don't want to say I don't blame them, but we all sit here and kind of go, I don't think he is either. So as a player, you know when a top manager walks into your dressing room and he's somebody that you can look at and go, listen, I'll play right back for you, I'll play left back for you, I'll play anywhere for you because I believe you're going to get us something special. He's not that, and he hasn't been that at Manchester United, and maybe Ollie one day in his career will be that. But right now, I just see too many players within that group that I just feel like they're not that bothered, if you know what I mean. It's hard to say in terms of that they don't care, because obviously players care. It's more to do with that feeling of like, I really don't want my manager to lose his job, or I don't want Manchester United to be talked about in this way. I think there's quite a few of them that will go, yeah, well, if it don't work out here, I'll probably just go to PSG, or I'll go to Bayern or Real, or wherever they feel like they're good enough to go. That's what their mindset is, unfortunately.
Paul Pogba, Karen, is often the focus of discussions like this because of the talent that he has. I'm going to be doing the commentary on this game tomorrow, so I just kind of looking at numbers this afternoon at different things, and I was astonished to see that in the last 44 games that he's played for France and Manchester United, he scored twice. And when you think about the output of a player like that, there are individuals within that squad, not just him, whose performance levels have to be a lot higher on a consistent basis.
Yeah, totally agree. When you're at Manchester United and you're a World Cup winner, it has to be better than that. But it is down to the player, as the manager, getting them in the right positions, getting them in the right plays in around them so they can really drive and thrive in that midfield area. Because Paul Pogba, there's no one else can do what he does. He's been paid that money for a certain reason. He's won the World Cup for a certain reason because he's a top player, but for whatever reason, himself or the manager, they're not getting the best out of him, and they've got to come together and find a way of getting the best out of him. Saying that sometimes he can't play in the two, well, he did for France, so he can. I saw his team talk in the World Cup final. I don't know whether you guys saw it. He absolutely rallied the dressing room. So why is he not doing that for Manchester United? Is that himself? Is that because of the manager, like Jermaine's saying? Are they really playing for him? I don't know, but you've got to enlight the fire in his belly because you've got a world-class player there. And maybe it is one of those where certain players just need to move on. We just need him gone. He's been thinking about it for too long. We'll just do it then. Just get rid of him as a manager. If he's not want to be here, let's just go. Or get the best out of him. Don't be in the grey area where it's difficult, where it's just no good for no one.
I feel that Pogba's feeling at Manchester United has always been, I'm the best player in the middle of the park. Whether you want me as a defensive midfield player or an attacking midfield player, I'm the best player you've got. Now, kind of my issue for that is when you watch Paul Pogba for Manchester United, you can't really, when you look at him, you don't know kind of what he is. He's not scoring goals, he's not creating many goals, he's not stopping goals. When he played for France in the World Cup under Didier Deschamps and he was next to N'Golo Kante, I looked at him and I was like, yeah, this is you. I saw him defensively getting into his own box, headers on the penalty spot, clearing, getting forward, scoring goals, creating chances. He really had a definitive role within that team, and I don't know whether that was his acceptance of going, Griezmann is better in that position than me, and that's why he does that, or that me and N'Golo Kante are, Kante's better at doing that, so that's what I do in my role, because that's kind of what got him his move from Juve as well. If you think about it, he had kind of Pirlo behind him as the ball player. I think Vidal was in that team as well, players like Marquisio, but he was kind of like the third man that went, well, this is what I'm going to do. At United, I don't know, is he the ball player? He's not a goal scorer, as you've just alluded to. Is
that Ollie's fault, though, for going?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know what.
Well, you see, Karen, I would suggest that it probably is, because he doesn't seem to be prepared to leave people out for a consistent basis. So they sign Van der Beek and he finds situations for him. It's clearly a player that's not wanted there, is he? It's obvious. Otherwise he'd have been in more games than he's played in. There's not a role for Donny Van der Beek. So whoever decision that is, it seems to be the wrong one. He seems to rotate between Matic, Fred, McTominay, but he's got to decide who his best one is. He then seems to change things at the top of the pitch. Whether that's flexibility or weakness, I don't know, but it must be a fine margin between the two of them.
Yeah, and also as well, they're not playing well, the individuals, so he's trying to fit the system or trying to get players in, but they're not playing well, so he's trying to put out fires. But going back to Van der Beek, though, he's not the first player to go to a top side and not start and embed them into the teams. You've got to look at Fabinho, Oxley Chamberlain, Jesus, Bale. It takes time.
But they went into good teams. Teams that were winning, it's hard to get in. This team is all over the place and he's still not getting a pick.
Yeah, but to be fair, if I was him, I'd be quite happy sat out and going, I don't want to be a part of that. I'm thinking, you're all over the gaff, you're not helping me. And I think it just goes back to, again, the management, leadership on the pitch. I look at them like, who's the leader on this pitch? Who's going to grip this team and say, this is your role, this is your responsibility, really pinpoint it down? And I'm just like, I just don't see it. And so there's so many issues for me at Manchester United, from board level to captaincy level or leadership level to the manager as well. It just doesn't fit.
Ali, before you come in on that, on Everton, we're going to talk about Chelsea before the kick-off in your game, and I think that there's a situation developing there that they brought in Thiago Silva over the course of the summer at 36, whose best days are probably behind him as a very elite central defender. But in terms of what he's bringing to that Chelsea team, you can see the impact already. The people around him, Kurt Zouma's a better player. They look at much more. All the mistakes have been eradicated since he's been in there. He had a sloppy game himself against West Brom, but you can see that leadership in that team really paying dividends for them, and that might be really highlighting what Karen said.
Yeah, and that's what Karen was talking about in terms of, the role that Petr Cech played at the club and brought in Edouard Mendy and a vision and a plan and pieces fitting in. And Thiago Silva is the right piece to drop into that defence, because Kurt Zouma, who, has been at Chelsea since 2015, this is the best we've seen him, and he is playing like that. I mean, it's a bit like watching Joe Gomez for Liverpool, isn't it? It's because of the man alongside him in the defence, and the pieces have been dropped in. Is it 5 clean sheets in a row now? I saw the game against Brentford.
They've not conceded a goal for 7.5 hours, or over 7.5 hours, and for a team that was leaking them pretty regularly, that's a big step in the right direction.
Just picking the right player in the right position that improves other players.
While you're having your half-time cuppa, Jermaine and I are going to speak about Chelsea and this Thiago impact and how the season might look like for them. But Jay, just a thought on Everton. They've lost 2 in a row. Ancelotti's not lost 3 in a row for 14 years since he was the AC Milan manager in league football. They get James Rodriguez back this week, but they've still got 1 or 2 out. Their team without Richarlison, are they? And the results tend to confirm that.
I think that is, but if you actually look at Richarlison's style of play, he is so dynamic, to press him from the front, to the impact that he has on the opposition. I think it's a totally different ball game. When you have someone like, Iwobi facing you, who just wants to get the ball and kind of like be creative and try and make things happen. Richarlison, who will literally run over the top of you, literally, and win the ball above you, and he will flatten you to try and score. He'll run past you. He tracks back to make things happen the other way. He does everything very aggressive. And obviously Luca Dean as well was missing for a couple of those games, who's hugely creative within all that as well. So I think Everton were always going to be one of those sides. I think none of us got carried away too much of their start. We all knew that their starting 11 was top. They had to kind of go into their squad. They was going to have some frailties, and Ancelotti will know that, but they'll be massively up for this game because they've been so under par for the couple of games that they have played.
If they do win, they'll go top, at least for the time being, above Liverpool on goal difference in the match against Manchester United. So there's a big incentive for Everton too. It's the 12:30 kickoff. Updates on 5 Live Sport. Everton against Manchester United at Goodison Park, a game that took on added significance and importance on the back of the Champions League. Manchester United on Wednesday. Let's have a look at Manchester City against Liverpool then, because this is kind of the apple of the 5 Live Sport eye this weekend. It's the centrepiece of 5 Live Premier League Sunday, full commentary from 4:30. Over the last couple of years has been a title decider, Jay, but I kind of look at it this season and think they're both going to drop points along the way, so it's not quite as cutthroat as it has been in the past, even though it's a great game.
I think it's still a nice marker though, isn't it? Let's be honest. I think that and I mentioned it in the opener, I think if this would have been game 1 or 2 or even 3 in the season, there's nothing really I'd have thought of it, because everybody was at different phases at different times. And you have to say the way Liverpool have responded to the loss of Van Dijk has been good, it's been positive. Yet to be probably tested against a top team, but that's going to come obviously this weekend. But I feel like they're in a good place. I do. I feel like I've been watching a lot of City lately, and they are, they're right back at it again, City. So, I actually have them probably just about favourites in this game, just purely and simply because of the impact of Van Dijk and what that might mean for a game of this magnitude. But I still think there's a lot on it. I think it's a good chance here now, I think, for both teams to go on a run of fixtures to separate themselves. But you're right, they're going to lose games, both of them, throughout the season.
One thing you do see when you watch Manchester City, Karen, these days is when they've got Ruben Dias alongside Aymeric Laporte, and the form either side of them of Cancelo and Walker. They look a really solid defensive team again. Look, for most parts of last season, is that the big area that they've improved on that can carry them forward this time?
It was the only area I felt they had to improve on. They were so bad last season. I mean, Walker's playing out of his skin. It's the best I've seen him in quite a while, actually. He's playing really, really well. Diaz, he wasn't their number 1 pick, I don't think, to go in at centre-back, but he's young, and again, we talk about leadership. He's got that. He's been captain of the youth teams. He's played a lot of games for Benfica. He knows what he's doing. He's fitted in right next to Laporte really, really well. And Cancelo, again, playing the best I've seen him in a very, very long time. And they look like the old Manchester City. Time they miss company. Again, that leadership, that togetherness. They lost Laporte last year, and they've just come back to basics, really. And I really like Diaz. I think he'll grow and keep growing, and next to Laporte he'll keep growing in confidence as well. But for me, Kyle Walker's been the main guy. I think his levels have gone to, again, they've stretched again.
Yeah, they have. But who's another one who I think in the last 2 or 3 games has massively turned up is Rodri.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. Physically, he was brilliant last week at Sheffield United.
Mate, honestly, I wasn't having him at all. When he came in, I'm thinking, what does this guy do, really, to be playing for Manchester City under Pep Guardiola? I'm not seeing anything different. And that was for the majority of last year. I watched games kind of bypass him. I watched him pass the ball sideways, and I thought, okay, yeah, you could have brought in a lot of players that could have done that. I'm not seeing it. I think after the game against Leicester, I don't know whether there was like kind of one of those moments in a dressing room where there was like, hang on a minute, in Manchester City, this can't be happening, we're champions, you, a few fingers pointed, a few home truths been said, but he's come out of that game a different player. I'm all of a sudden not thinking, where's Fernandinho? He seems to want to get about now and put tackles in and actually show that physical nature to his game and actually be a bit more commanding so that the game goes through him.
Do you know what, Jay? Bramall Lane last week, it was almost as if somebody had said to him, you do realise how big and strong you are, don't you?
Yeah.
Because he actually played to his size 100%. Against a team that are on midfield.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, we can talk about their centre halves as much as you want, and we know how good they are, but we also know that Fernandinho role has been as big a gap as losing company, because Fernandinho's not been able to fill it because he plays centre half most of the time, and obviously Rodri's brought in to do that. But I think he's just about realising the